Let's just pray. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for today. Thank you for each other. And thank you for your word. Just open your word to us now, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
A few pointers about why people come to church. If you can give me a thumbs up if it relates to you. This is done by Hillsong. I'm not sure whether it's their congregation or they massive congregations, but this is a survey they did. Reasons to go to church. It gives me something interesting to talk about on Monday morning. It reflects a life beyond myself. It is a declaration that I am a Christian. People who go to church live longer.
Doesn't matter.
Apparently. It is the right thing to do. It reminds me I am not alone. Get a response. We don't need to do that. You will find you are loved. It keeps me out of trouble. It keeps me off the streets.
They are Australian.
My children learn the Bible there. It's interesting because it helps me to be a happy person. It helps me to take my fears of me and onto God. That's the response. Some reasons not to go to church. This again.
Come the one that I come to church for.
Go on then.
To worship God.
Thank you, Anna. We've skipped by about 10 minutes now. early coffee, right? Reasons not to come to church. Church lasts too long. The preacher spits on people in the first row. They only want your money. I fear being judged. I like this one. I didn't come for 2 weeks. Nobody noticed, so now I'm annoyed. I'm not going. And the last one, I'm the only one that sings in tune. So, reasons to come.
Reasons to be cheerful.
Yeah, I was trying to fit that in.
Reasons to be cheerful.
Reasons, that's that song, isn't it? Reasons to be cheerful. The reason we come, as I'm quite right to point, is to worship. We've come to worship Jesus. We've got a little piece of paper, one between two. I'd like you to decide with the person next to you, what is so attractive about Jesus? What is it that attracts you about Jesus? Assuming you found... Anyone short of a pen? Oh, at the back, there's bits of paper.
No, I'm writing, you're giving me the answers.
What's attractive about Jesus?
And those all about Is there anybody spare?
Did you do something with Jessica? No, I think Becky's going to volunteer.
Wayne's got that beforehand. Oh, yes.
There'll be others.
No, I'm getting back on that. So I'm just writing it.
Becky was like teaching me about No, right, yeah, I've heard that. Right. What is it? What, from the Dream of Fire? It's a poem.
Yeah. If you haven't completed, you can think on your feet. Brave people, what's so good about Jesus? Shall I pick on Jessica because I've heard hers? What did you say, Jessica?
He loves me.
He loves me.
Oh.
And what was the second bit?
He loves me.
Yeah, he loves me. He loves Jessica. He loves all of us. Thank you, Jessica. Someone else?
Yeah.
Maddie.
Wow. He's attractive. Love, peace, forgiveness, handsome. I love his name. He also creates miracles, healing, and salvation.
Very good. Thank you. It's a whole set of sermons. Somebody else? Let's just speed up a bit.
He understands what it's like to be human.
He understands what it's like to be human. Very good. Yeah.
It's family.
He is family.
Yep.
Yeah, he is family.
He looks after us.
He looks after us.
Love healing, supporting storms of life, gives you hope. He is the truth and the life. He guides us and leads us into our lives,
Thank you very much. Alan, do you want to?
I've got forgiving.
Forgiving.
Forgiving and faithful.
And he is faithful.
He's not religious.
He's not religious. Yeah.
And
He has a sense of humour.
He's got a sense of humour.
Children loved him and he had time for them.
Children loved him and they had time for him. Thank you.
It's not judgmental.
He's not judgmental.
That's what I
Yeah. Anyone know?
He's patient.
And he's patient.
We're not always patient, but he is.
He is patient. Good. So we've got a whole cloud of reasons to be here this morning. And we've got to sort of think our way into this passage from Mark. Peter. We've had a bit about Peter in the various sermons, and we're going to talk this morning about what leads Peter to declare that Jesus is the Messiah. We've got all these reasons. Yeah. Peter was working from a much more limited base. He hadn't got this sort of cloud. The Bible talks about the cloud of witnesses, and we are that cloud. Peter didn't have that. Peter was sort of going with the flow, really. We've seen, where he... So what does lead Peter to declare Jesus' messiahship? And also, one of the interesting things about this passage for today is what makes Jesus say to him at the very end of this bit, keep it secret. Yeah, that's a rule. Always puzzled me. Yeah, we'll come back to it. So, we're the cloud of witnesses, but Peter is the witness. Mark's gospel came out of Peter's experience. It was a way of saying, this is the experience that Peter had. So, flipping back to what we've had from the teachings on Peter, why, when Peter turns to Jesus and says, "You are the Messiah," what's he basing it on? What's happened in the life of Jesus, in his ministry, that's
Miracles, miracles.
been miracles, yeah,
Healing.
been healings, yeah,
His love and patience, like Anne was saying. His everlasting forgiveness, slow to anger.
good, yeah. If you read through the Gospels, we're quite well progressed. Yes, yeah, talked on
That's
that.
why.
Yeah. In the part of, we're in chapter 8 at the moment, Jesus has demonstrated for something like 2 years his ministry, his love, all the things that now attract us to Jesus were demonstrated to Peter through the ministry, then recorded by Mark. It's quite important to get hold of that. Mark starts his gospel by saying, and this is where the good news starts. He really sort of nails it. He says, get hold of this. The good news of Jesus the Messiah, God's Son. And rather like Anna kindly preempting me, Mark says, this is it. That's what it's about. Yeah, I'll read it again. It's right there at the beginning of Mark. This is where the good news starts. The good news of Jesus the Messiah, God's Son. Done. Yeah? So it's like, it's not a plot spoiler, it's a banner headline to say, this is what it's about. Yeah? Read this book with the understanding that we're going to get to exactly the point that we've got to today. Jesus' messiahship. Jesus declaring, what do you say that, who do you say that I am? So, just notice, I'll read the first part of the reading again from verse 22. They came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. When he put spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked him, "Do you see anything?" He looked up and said, "I see people. They look like trees walking around." Once more, Jesus put his hand on the man's eyes, and then his eyes opened, his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus sent him home, saying, "Don't even go into the village." To me, that part is like Jesus saying, I'm preparing this. I know what this is about. Yeah, it's a very relatively small part, but it's very important to lead into where Peter's at. Jesus is saying, look, I can do this. I can heal a blind man. I can give him sight. And it's no coincidence, is it, that Jesus then goes on to open Peter's eyes. We'll see that in a minute. So this, when Jesus says, who do you say that I am? It should be one of those moments in Peter's life that he just wants to go out and tell everybody. Surely this is what his commitment to Jesus, his commitment to him was all about. It's leading up to the point where Jesus is saying, I'm much more than you ever expected. You follow the preacher, you followed someone that could work miracles. Jesus wasn't the only person that was preaching, he wasn't the only person to be doing miracles. Yeah? It's the opening of Peter's eyes is what the passage is about. So, Jesus has taken the disciples quite a long way away from their sort of stamping ground. He's taken them right to the north. He's done this miracle, and he's done it in a location that's quite distinct in the geography of Israel. And it's very distinct because it was declared to be a specially royal place. Caesarea Philippi was a place that was named firstly for Caesar, and then for Herod, and this was within the lifetime of the disciples and Jesus, that it was especially a royal place that the stamp of the kingship of that country was on. It was also, strangely enough, a place where there was a temple to Caesar, and Jesus has chosen this location because of its kingly significance, because Jesus is saying, there's so much more that you need to know, there's so much more that you need to experience, but grounded in all the experiences that we've talked about just initially starting this. So, Jesus, for some reason, wants an element of privacy. He's taken the disciples right up to the north of the country. He's declared to them, what are you saying that I am? I've got a recommendation for you of this little book by Tom Wright. The old Tom Wright. It is, joking apart, it's a really good readable book. Tom Wright is, for anyone that can get hold of him, is really accessible. Especially if you see Tom Wright. If you see N.T. Wright, it's a little bit more formidable. But Tom Wright, it's the same guy, but it's really worth getting hold of. Lent for Everyone, Mark. There's a whole series of them. And this is what Tom Wright says. It's just like a thunderclap opening the skies. With a flash, Mark's readers have known all along. I'll start again now. It comes like a thunderclap opening the skies with a flash. Mark's readers have known all along, of course, because of the voice at the baptism. But Jesus was so different from the messiahs of popular imagination. He was a healer, not a military leader. He spoke about forgiveness, not revenge. He was challenging and redefining Israel's ancient symbols. And yet, the cumulative weight of all that Peter and the others had witnessed spoke for itself and gathered itself together in one great leap of faith. So, Peter's seen partial healing of the blind man and the complete healing of the blind man. So, Peter's ready to be led. He's in a position of faith. He knows that Jesus' power is there. It's very interesting when Jesus says, who do they say that I am? One of the interesting features is that Peter doesn't come back and say, oh, well, yeah, you might be Elijah, you might be John, that's what people are saying. He doesn't say, people say you are the Messiah. The Jewish people, excuse me. The Jewish people were expecting Messiah. And a whole range of ideas of what the Messiah would be. Yeah? He would be powerful. Yeah? There wasn't going to be a Messiah that wasn't powerful. People hadn't identified Jesus as the Messiah. Yeah? So, when we come to the point where Jesus says, who do you say that I am? Peter is ready to say, you're the Messiah. I don't believe that Peter had much of an idea what he was actually saying. There's a whole whirlpool of ideas about the Messiah. Peter was prepared to declare, yes, you're the Messiah. It was for Jesus to reveal what that meant. Tom Wright again, or rather, I'll do Tom Wright first. The whole point of Jesus' mission was that in and through his work, God was becoming king. The king of Israel, upstaging Herod, the king of the world, displacing Caesar. Messiah meant king, and king was fighting talk. One of the things that is such a puzzle that it should have to remain a secret is because it was the news that people were waiting for. Peter was the person we've seen in the studies that we've done. He was the person that was completely gung-ho when it came to things. He would get out of the boat, he would, is not a person that you would expect to be keeping secrets. So it's quite a tough ask for Peter, and we'll just come back to that in just a minute, but hold in your mind the idea of why should the secrecy be such an element of Jesus' dealings with Peter. One of the reasons, as I've said, is I believe that Peter was beginning to grasp, like the blind man, partially regained sight and then completely regained sight. He needed the question, who does everyone say that I am? Everyone wasn't identifying Jesus as a Messiah. Peter was prepared to identify Jesus as Messiah, even knowing his own limitations. There's other reasons why Jesus would want secrecy in the Messiah, the declaration of being the Messiah, because it was a dangerous declaration. It was a police state. The Romans were in control. They had spies. They would be keeping tabs on the people that were likely to be causing them problems. So that's point one, that the secrecy was necessary because Jesus was aware that people would be in danger. Yeah, there was an element of danger. It was challenging the powers that existed. The other point I think we have to bear in mind is that Peter gets things wrong. Yeah, that's one of the stamps of what we've seen in Peter's life. His response to Jesus' ministry is that he does get things wrong quite consistently. It's one of the reliable things about Peter, is that he consistently gets things wrong, and that's such a testimony to us nowadays that Jesus takes Peter at his own pace. And I think one of the elements of Peter's conversation with Jesus is the fact that Jesus is saying, I won't get you going around Israel saying, this is the Messiah, because you haven't got much of a clue what you're actually saying. All Peter can really say is, what I've seen. Yeah? And that's why Mark's Gospel is so important, because Mark says, this is what I have seen Peter seeing. Yeah? That's why it's such an important point. So Peter gets it wrong, and he doesn't get there all in one jump. He's like the blind man that's healed, and immediately after revealing this, Jesus goes on to teach about his suffering, and Peter gets that wrong as well, doesn't he? Yeah. If you look on just the next little bit, when Jesus predicts his death, he then began to teach them the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law. He must be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him to one side and rebuked him. And then Jesus turned and looked at his disciple and rebuked Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." So Peter gets it absolutely and utterly wrong very shortly after. Yeah? Why is it so important that the Messiahship of Jesus should be declared? Because it must be. Yeah? We need to declare Jesus' lordship in our lives, in this place that we live in, and Peter needed to come to that point. But Jesus isn't expecting that we will have a total grasp. Jesus takes us as we are. Jesus takes us in the knowledge that we too get things almost completely wrong. So finish by reminding ourselves that it's always God who reveals the Messiahship of Jesus.
Yeah.
This is particularly in the same passage in Matthew 16. And I'll just read it so you don't have to turn it over. Matthew says, "Blessed are you, Simon, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven." So it's that revealing bit by bit that I think is terribly exciting for us as Christians, and it is what brings us to the knowledge of the Lordship of Jesus as Messiah. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, King of the world, rule in our hearts, our countries, and our world. with the healing power of your love. Amen.
Amen.